Hello. Jeez, that's loud. I was considering that if it was only like 3 of us, we'd just go next door, all of us. That's all right, you're all here. Welcome, welcome. I know, Friday morning. Oh, 1 more people, 2 more peoples. Welcome. Oh no, come on up. At least no one's sitting at the back. Usually when there's like 10 people, there's always one that sits down the far corner, and then I have to encourage people to come forward. All right, hi, I'm Lars. This is a bit of a fun talk, and we'll make it a bit more interactive, hopefully. So, it came about as a joke, and then it became a real talk. It's the best way to do it. Okay, so I can see it there, just getting my bearings. So, hello, that's me. I work for Pluralsight, that's the plug. Microsoft MVP, they give me stickers, which means I talk a lot about Azure. And I recently made a YouTube channel. That's why I put it over there, because I couldn't fit it anywhere else on the slide. But I do a whole bunch of videos on home automation and farm automation, and I just got a drone and stuff. So anyway, that's my plug. So I live here. And that's less exciting when I'm doing it at NDC Melbourne compared to like NDC Copenhagen. But I live in the middle of Victoria. And that means that I have, these things. Do you know what those are? It's close. The llamas, right? Llamas are fun, apparently. So they're actually neighbors' llamas. And then for some reason, I put them on the internet and went, hey, look, llamas. And everyone went, ooh, llamas. So I kept putting them on the internet. So I made Llama Cam. But no, throughout the talk, if you want to, you can be like these girls and just judge your life choices, and you can ask questions if you want to, right? So I'm very happy to answer questions, because if you ask questions, that means we're having a conversation, which means that we're all learning a bit better, and it's a bit more entertaining and enjoyable. But this is what they do. They'll come up to the fence about 2 meters from you and just look at you for like 10 minutes, just stare at you, and you're like, okay, what did I do? Back off. Anyway, enough about llamas. So I'm talking about spam, and bear with me, this is a bit of a contrived idea, but this is the definition from Wikipedia, I apologize, but it says irrelevant or unsolicited messages sent over the internet, typically to a large number of users, yes, for the purpose of advertising, phishing, spreading malware, etc. Now there was one word that stood out to me on this, because I'm like, hang on, is it really irrelevant? Is it? Like, that's our premise here, right? So I'm trying to and well, we'll get to that, but use machine learning, right, to figure this out. Is it irrelevant? So, spam. How many % of emails do you think is spam? 90? It's good. Anyone? So like, it's probably not 12, right? Like, it's more than 20 for sure, more than 35. Yeah, we all nodding. Just because he said 90 doesn't mean he's right. Just saying. Okay. 10 years ago? Okay, yeah. 50? You reckon half? Yeah, because I didn't know either. Right, that was the whole, I looked into it. It's actually 84% still. So this was last year. I have not been able to find more up to date than that. But still, it's probably not completely off. So this is over a week, June 3 to 9. 362 billion emails were spam, and 69 billion were legitimate. So that's a shitload. Can I say? Oh, we're being recorded. Sorry, YouTube. That's a crap load of emails, right? So where do they all go? People having fun with it. This is Reddit. Have you seen these graphs before? People sort all sorts, like here's my income, or here's how many job applications I made, or here, whatever it might be. So someone, and this is kind of interesting. It's surprising. We have, majority is Viagra. Meh. I'm amazed they still do that. Surely people don't buy that. Anyway. And then there's business software, etc. But then, gutter protection? How does he know it's spam? What if you want gutter protection, right? So I find these entertaining, to be honest. And there's a proposition, there's sales, there's emails, etc. Right? Spam source usually comes from finances. For some reason, they just want your money. We kind of knew that. But there's also social networking sites and internet. What are global internet portals? Anyone know? Because I don't know what that means. Is it like Yahoo? AOL? Woo! Yeah, telephone, internet provider services. And then, of course, there's phishing, a whole lot of phishing, etc. But what happens with all these? Like, we just discard all this spam emails, right? We just leave it in big piles of junk everywhere. Hence, we have a junk folder, right? So we just have spam, spam, spam filters, spam, junk email, etc. Right? We just delete it. Right? You do this. Right? Who doesn't delete their junk email? See? He loves it. That's why there's 90%. It's your fault. So how do you go through your junk email? Do you have a junk folder and then once a week you look through it? So we still read it, right? We still look at it. Yeah. But I think we can learn to love spam a bit more. Right? And bear with me, I'm making it funny, right? We can love spam. Maybe. I'm going to use we'll get to the code in just a minute, all right? This is my intro. So maybe we can use robots, right? That's Wally, I like Wally. And maybe we can use machine learning, right? So machine learning is this, it sounds real. Does anyone use machine learning, by the way? Does anyone use it? I know you do. Yeah, no. But you're using it as what? Give us an example. Okay, predictive modeling. So yeah, so it could be or fraud or whatever it might be. Yeah, but it's machine learning. When I first thought like, okay, I want to learn about machine learning, it sounds really frightening. Like, it sounds like it's a huge area, and you go, oh shit, where do I even start? I said it again. Sorry, YouTube. I'm in Australia now. I'm allowed. And but it's the study of computer algorithms that can improve automatically. That's the key word. They improve automatically, hence machine learning, through experience in using data. So I thought, what if I feed all this spam into machine learning somehow, right? What can we do? So we can find out who is this spam? What does it want to do? Okay, so here's my very high-tech sample. Is my Outlook junk inbox. So here's some of my spam emails. Right, mum of 2 shits, 70 pounds, obviously. And I thought I'll just give you a couple of examples before we jump into and actually do the whole sentiment analysis, which is what it is. Here's a good one, I thought. I don't even know if it is spam. I don't know anything about horses. I have llamas, but I still don't know anything about llamas either. But does anyone do anything with horses? Anyone? No? No? No one? What is horse tail and mane growth? I don't know. So it's like, okay, maybe it's not spam, maybe it is. Or this one is one of my favorite. It's almost poetic. Someone wrote this, I'm sure. I'm sure someone sat down and actually wrote about Jenny. And spent a lot of time on it. Now I've copied out, I've deleted some of the stupid links that are always massive and so on. But I thought, okay, well, I'll do it justice. I'll try and look at the spam and try and figure out what it actually is that it might be wanting to achieve. It's sentiment. So I'm going to use Azure. I'm going to use cognitive services, which is a great way to get into machine learning, by the way. So I'll show you how we do all that in just a second. So there's only a few things you need to sort of be aware of. There's some mathematics. They're not hard, though. We only need to know about logistic regression, neural networks, and partial derivatives. No, not really. You don't need to know any of this. I have no idea. Anyone does mathematics? Because I don't even know what this means. We just can do this. Cognitive services is have anyone used Azure before at all? Yes. Sorry, I know Damon, I know sort of what he does. I use Azure as well. All right, cool. But if you haven't, we'll look at it, we'll set it all up from scratch. That's how easy it is. We can do it. I'll probably have time left over as well for questions and everything, or questions throughout. But this is what it looks like. We'll look at that more in just a second. And all we need are just these 3 points. There's an endpoint, which we're gonna use, and some keys, and then we get a testing mechanism, or a testing feature, page, whatever Microsoft set up, like a sandbox. Okay, so enough slides. Let's do some code. It's Azure. It's not a lot of code. Jeepers. We good? Okay. All right. That's not Azure. There we go. So if you haven't seen Azure before, this is the Azure portal. There are many ways of interacting with Azure, but in terms of a presentation and showing things, the UI is always the best way, in my opinion. So I'm going to go do everything through the Azure portal, which is this. And I'm not going to tell you all about Azure, obviously, but quick introduction. There's a menu on the left, which shows you a whole bunch of what your services can be and creating services. There's some favorites. And then there's the search bar up here, which is probably the best feature of the Azure portal in terms of finding anything. And then there's all my recent resources down here. So I've been doing other stuff, right? So I want to create a cognitive services. So all I have to do is write cognitive, or close enough. And there's cognitive services, right? And that's it. Cool. Hang on. Oh, here we go. So this is what we saw just before up on the screen. So there's 4 different types of cognitive services, or categories. So there's speech, there's language, which is what we're going to be using, there's vision, decision, and then multipurpose, so you can link them together. But there's 4 general categories. And these are, in terms of machine learning, these are models, machine learning models that have been pre-made for you by Microsoft. Right, so they're saying, hey, if you want to do something like I chose the hardest word, sorry. That one, anomaly detector. Then we've already created a model for you, and you just got to insert your data, and we'll try and help you along. This is not the machine learning. It's not called Machine Learning Studio anymore. I think they changed the name, but there's a whole segment of Azure which is based on machine learning, where you build your own models and you train your own and all that. This is not that. This is like the entry level. Start here before you go further. But it's very, very powerful. I have been, before we get into the language one, I've been using computer vision and analyze content and images. So I created llama.com.au to put my llamas on the internet. It's not running right now because the paddock that the cameras in don't have llamas. I know, it's flawed my plan. But what I wanted to do is that because there's not always llamas in front of the camera, it gets boring. Right, you go, hey, llama cam, and there's no llamas. Right, so it's kind of defeated the purpose. I wanted to use computer vision to then have, say, a sample every 30 seconds, take an image from the camera and go, is there a llama in it? Right, so I have trained a model that says llama or not. So you feed it in a whole lot of images of llamas and then a whole lot of images of not llamas, like horses and giraffes and trees and whatever, right, to train it. And then the idea is that when a llama is in the picture, I can send you a notification somehow, probably a web notification, right? That was the plan. Haven't quite got to it yet. But stuff like that we can do, and it's relatively simple. Yes, we need to know a little bit about tech, but we don't need to know a lot about machine learning, and that's kind of the key to get into it. So let's create a language service. So you just click create. I know, it's very exciting. And there's a couple of custom features, but in general, you just get everything sort of for free. So I'm just going to continue to create my resource. And all you have to do is give it a name. So I probably have an NDC Melbourne, resource group. So in Azure, in case you didn't know, everything has to be in a resource group, which is like a logical container for your resources. Cool, and I'm going to put this in Australia East, because that's kind of where we are-ish. And we can call this NDC Melb. Spam, something. And then there's a pricing tier. There's a free tier. So if you want to play with this, you can set up a free Azure account if you don't have one, and you can actually just create a free tier. So it's very approachable. And this is, that's it. I have to say I'm responsible use of AI. So there's a whole bunch of conditions on what that means. So this is who can access this service over the network. I'm not going to go through all these. There's not that many actually for this service. For now, we're just going to let everything access it because we want to use it, but be careful with that possibly. And then there's a thing called managed identity. If you want to know more about Azure authentication, that's a really good place to start. Managed identity in Azure. It is a fantastic service. Basically, lets Azure handle all the authentication for you within services, between services within Azure. It's very, very cool. And most services are sort of supporting it now. But we'll just create that. It doesn't take long. So it's just doing a validation thing to make sure I didn't mess anything up. And then we create it. I think it only takes a minute. Any questions? I know it's 9 a.m. on a Friday, but still. Did you enjoy the talks last night? Did you, if you went, no pressure. Yeah, that was good. Except there was one about failing at presentations or something. That was a bit. But you're doing prep, what to fail? Ah, right. All right. So this, yeah, it usually takes about a minute. So that's, now I'm getting all these services within the language cognitive service. So there's a whole bunch of services in it. So I can show you those while we wait. So this is the cognitive services sort of sandbox that has, you can see all the different endpoints on the left here. I don't know what all of them are. I don't know why there's a cancel healthcare prediction job specifically. I'm not sure. But the one we're using is the sentiment, which is here, right, on the left. And that comes up with this API. There's different versions. It's 3.1 is what I'm using. And there are different testing consoles. That's the right word. I forgot that before. So you can see all the different regions in Azure. So we've got to choose the region that we're in, which was Australia East, once it's created. And then there's a few parameters we can put in, but I'll talk you through those as well. And that's pretty much it. And then it's just examples on what they are. But we'll get to all that. Cool. Hopefully it's done now. There we go. Deployment is complete. So we go to that resource. And in here is a very, very standard way of looking at Azure services. All that on the left is very common. It may change a little bit depending on what type of service you have, but this is the look of an Azure service. And we're sort of ready to go, really. That's all we had to do. Cognitive services created, we can now use it. So, I keep losing this. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to choose Australia East, because that's where we set it up, right? So just click on that. You can see the URL. It's a bit hard to tell, but it says Australia East as well, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll just let it load. There we go. And then there's two ways you can use it. Either you put in the name of the resource, or you just use the API key, which is the easiest way, to be honest. And then there's 5 different parameters we can put in. I'm not going to change any of those for now. All I have to do is put in this subscription value key thing, which is over here in my service, keys and endpoint. And I just copy the key. That's all you have to do. It's just a validation. It's like an auth token, really, or SAS token. So now I'm ready to use it. And they've already even populated a little thing for me. We'll change that to some of the spam in a minute. But so you can give it a range of documents. So this is JSON notation. I'm hoping anyone doesn't know JSON. I don't want to assume, but it's kind of common. It's just a JSON format. And here's the request that's going to be sent off to that endpoint. So you can see there's a Australia East, blah, 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 blah. And here's my, my request. And I can send that off. So this is some great atmosphere, close to plenty of restaurants, hot hotels, hot eels, hotels in transit, staff-friendly and helpful. Some review, I'm guessing, right? So the idea is that I send this off, and I'm asking Azure Cognitive Services, okay, what is the sentiment of this, this string, this text? So I'll send that, and you get a response back really quick, 73 milliseconds. So that's gone to Azure, it's done the whole processing, and it's sent it back, etc. It's quite impressive, I think, still. And you get this back split up by sentence and the whole document. So it's saying the document is positive, 93% confident that this is positive. And then it breaks it up into each sentence. Great atmosphere, it's definitely positive, it says. Close to plenty of restaurants, it's definitely positive. And then, whoops, sorry. And then staff are friendly and helpful. Definitely positive. Oh, sorry, here. Close to plenty of restaurants, hotels, and transit is probably positive. You can see it's 79, 18, 30. So it's not hard to read. That's what you get back. So this is very simple kind of text, right? Okay. Let's pick one of my spam emails. Here's some I've prepared earlier. These are all spam emails that I've copied out and removed all the crap, right? So it's just the text string. And I usually take a random one, so we're not sure exactly what's going to happen. But let's do that one. Something's in stock now. I hope I've cleaned it up properly, but we're about to find out. So I'm going to just replace this string here. like this. So now you can see it's just one long string, right? So again, this is just for testing purposes, just to prove or explain what it's doing. And now I'm going to send that off, 151 milliseconds, and we get the same sort of thing. Nord has quietly become the most, yada, yada, yada. That's a positive thing, right? And then it says, further down as well, what makes these, yada, yada, and so on. You get the point, right? Okay. So there's a thing about this that's, it's all great that we can see whether a sentence is positive or negative or neutral or whatever. There's another aspect to it is that we don't know what they're talking about, essentially. So we can see it says, what makes these awesome digital pianos so awesome, yada, yada. We can say that that's neutral, but we might not be entirely sure what it is that is neutral. Like, what is the topic that we are talking about? And that's where we have this concept called opinion mining. So opinion mining is up here as a parameter, and you can just put in true, right? It's a Boolean. So now it'll not only give you the sentiment analysis, but it'll also go through each sentence and do what's called opinion mining, which is finding the topic of that sentence and say, okay, we're actually talking about this thing, and that's what the sentiment is about, which is much more useful. So if I try and run this, again, I always choose a random one because we'll see what comes out of it. So in here, so down here, what makes these awesome digital pianos so awesome, and why does every keyboard player have to have one? Now, we mentally, like humans, we probably know what it's about, but here's the opinion mining is here. It says it's about digital pianos, right? So it's positive about digital pianos. And as a typical example is if you have restaurant reviews, well, you want to know, is the food good or bad? Is the staff good or bad? Is the atmosphere good or bad, etc. So it's really useful to have these things come out automatically, essentially, as part of the sentiment analysis. Any questions on that? Oh, this is going to be a short talk. Yeah, so that's really cool. I find that most useful. And again, I haven't actually done much, right? The whole idea of cognitive services, and I'll show you an example of like a small program that uses it, is that you can ping this API with however you authenticate, and you can get this out. So you can integrate it into your company products or your whatever it might be that you have that you're creating, right? As an example. So if you were creating the new Yelp or whatever, right, you could use this as part of it. Now the restaurant one is a heavily overused example, but it kind of proves the point. Okay, I'll just go through what the other parts of it is. So, whoops. So we have the model version, kind of gives you an idea if you always want to use a specific model, because Microsoft does evolve the model over time. One common question is like, can I improve the model as a user? Some of them you can. I'll get to that in just, I'll have a whole slide on that. But you can choose a specific version of the API if you want to. And then there's the show stats, so we can put that on. I can't remember exactly how that looks, but it's basically stats about the request. So there. Just shows you how many documents you put in, valid documents, etc. Right? So that is just some stats about the request that you've put through. So maybe that's useful, maybe not. It could be if you're counting something or if you want to keep track of the API account or something. And then there are two more, one more really. Logging opt-out. So everything that you send up to cognitive services is logged for 48 hours. So Microsoft takes it and they go, we're going to use this to improve the cognitive service. If you don't want that to happen, you can set that to true and it won't store any of your data. It'll just do the request and send it back. So that's just a way that you can sort of go, no, it's this is top secret FBI stuff. I don't want someone to, well, maybe not. But you have the option. But if you don't put anything there, they will use it to improve the model over time. Yeah. Questions? Come on.
Is there a different type of string index type?
Good question. Is there a different? I don't think there is. If I go back to here, the string index type says here specifies the method used to interpret string offsets. Again, this is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but you can say for additional information, there's that text analysis offset. I haven't played with that, to be honest. But I don't think there is any others, now that you mention it. What would you like to use?
I was just curious.
Okay, just curious. Fair enough. Okay, I'll be curious as well for the next time I do the talk. I'll figure it out. So come then. But yeah, the opinion mining is by far the most useful of these, right? It just adds that extra layer. Yes, sir.
For a while, they were allowing some of these cognitive models to be downloaded and running containers in your own infra.
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
Is that the question?
that's the question.
Okay.
Are you still doing it, and is this coming?
So you can download some of the models or some of the services as a standalone thing. I was actually going to do that with the image, whatever it was again, cognitive vision, whatever it's called, I can't remember now, for the llama cam, because I was going to run that locally. When I dreamt up that beautiful scenario, I was still on my old satellite connection and I had limited data. Welcome to Australia. So I was thinking of doing that rather than sending up tons and tons of photos and video. Can you do it right now? I'm assuming you can. I actually don't know. But you definitely could, which is useful. So if you can download it as a Docker container, you can deploy it different places, right? You just got to keep it up to date yourself then. Obviously, Microsoft's not going to look into your container. That's a good question. Or comment. Anyone else? No? All right, let me just find. I'll go into my repos. And there we go. Good old Visual Studio folders, eh? I know it's not VS Code. Thank you. There's always one that goes, oh, you're not using VS Code, are you? So this is one of the examples that Microsoft that I've adapted. I always like doing that because that means you can kind of do it as well, rather than me dreaming up something that I spend a whole lot of time on and then people go, oh, I don't know what you're doing. Eventually it will load, hopefully. This is a console application that uses the sentiment analysis endpoint. So I just got to put in my credentials for the one we created. Come on. Yay. It's just, I wanted to illustrate how easy it is to do this as well. Because I still, in my head, machine learning sounds really difficult. I find it, sort of, not overwhelming, but it's a large topic and I'm like, oh, I don't know where to start. And again, this is just an endpoint. Someone else is doing all the hard work. So this Azure credential here, I'm just going to change that with the key we had here, if it's not still copied there. Oh, and someone said this in the last time I did a talk. There's Windows key V, which shows you the history of your clipboard. And I always forget to use it. So, cool tip. Come on, there we go. So I've just copied in that key, right? So that's the key that came through, that secret key. So don't use that. I don't think it matters. And then I got to obviously update the endpoint name. So last time you can see I did this was a Tekorama. So I'm going to go and call this endpoint, copy this endpoint. Come on, please. There we go. Not responding. Welcome to live demos. Every time. Okay, so I'm going to paste that in here. There we go, right? So that's all I have to do. So I just have an endpoint, and I have the Azure key credential, which is an object that creates the Azure credentials, and I pass in the string, which is the token, or the endpoint. What was it called again? Key 1. Well, there you go. Then I create so first of all, up here I have the Azure AI text analytics library. So that's a NuGet package that you can use from the Azure SDK. And then I have a text analytics client. So that's the object that I create to query that API, right? I give the endpoint, I give the credentials, and I'm sort of good to go. So this is just one of Microsoft's verbose naming functions, right? Where you pass in the client. So it's just a console app. The real cool stuff is what's happening down here. Because we have all the documents, so I can pass in more than one piece of spam in this case. I can do a whole range of them if I wanted to. And then I can give you some options, which is opinion mining, include opinion mining, do the same parameters that we saw before. right? And then we just go through it. We call it. So that's what that analyze sentiment result collection contains, is all the stuff we saw before. So that whole JSON opt-in is now deserialized and put into the object. And then we just go for each. Yay. Right. So that's just the same as we just saw before, but just in the console lab in code. Right? And it's all console write line, because we're just going to print it out. So if I run this now, and what's the string we have is here. What do Einstein, Tesla, and even Nostradamus have in common? Sure. So then let's try and run it and see what happens, right? It's always interesting. Console applications. Who still uses console applications? Exactly, see? They're the best. Like, it's just to quickly get something working. Okay, so there's a bit more to it, I think. So this is the same thing. Blah, 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 right? So document sentiment negative, says at the top there. And then all the same scores. And then down here we have the sentiment analysis is, sorry, the opinion mining. Where did that go? No, has it not? It hasn't included that. Okay, I think I changed the example. I apologize. But it's the same thing as we get out. So if you were to use this, it's just a .NET API. So just an API endpoint for a REST call, right? So if you have .NET, that's cool, you can use that. If you use Python, Ruby, whatever, it all works. I've drunk so much Microsoft Kool-Aid that all I do is C#. But you don't have to. So, does that make sense? Again, this is going to be a short talk because you're very quiet. I know it's Friday morning. Press Enter key to exit. I just did. Oh, there we go. But this, you can download this from the Microsoft Docs as well. This exact thing. So, no questions? Nothing? No? So it means you understood everything. Great. Okay, so we are going to be short, but that's okay. Go and get a coffee. Let me just think. So obviously I did this with all of the different spam emails you saw before, right? And here's the JSON again, in case. So this is all we get back. It's beautifully simple. Like, we don't need to know anything about machine learning, essentially, right? You don't need to know how it works in detail. So I was talking about training the model. So here's directly from docs. It's a little bit tricky to see, especially down the back, because that's the naughty kids down there. There's all the different cognitive services on the left here. Then there's like no training data required, etc. You provide some or all, and then real time and near real time. So you can see there are some of them that you can input, and some of them where you don't have to, because none of them, you can see, they all have no training required. But like, for example, the custom vision, you provide some or all the training data, right? Has a cross. So that's my llama thing. I provide the images, because that's how it works. I have to give it something to be trained on. The model doesn't exist, only the method to train the model. Whereas the sentiment analysis, which was that was in the language service down here, you don't provide anything, so you can't train the model yourself. All right, so that's the slide I added because I kept getting this question. But I know, it's great, isn't it? I put through 20 different spam emails randomly. By the way, I didn't actually check what they were or anything, just whatever I got in. And this is my spam count. So now my manager's happy because there's a pie chart. There were health, business, weight loss, mind, and shopping. Not surprising, probably. That was the distribution. The overall sentiment, though, I don't know how we'd interpret this. If you're doing shopping, it's neutral. Health, probably you'd say, yeah, negative sentiment, because they want to, make it really bad, so you click on the link, I guess. And the same with business is always positive because, hey, you're going to be a millionaire tomorrow. Maybe even today, like if you're quick, or on the next 42. And then weight loss was a bit both ways. And of course, I know, that's neither here nor there, right? This is a bit of a fun way of getting into machine learning. Don't worry too much about the spam. But there's many ways that you can interpret these things when they do come back. And that was just, I thought that was it was weird. The whole shopping thing I found weird. And then a couple examples. And I have a really good example of how you can use machine learning in just a minute. Yeah. But I don't understand why this, like why would you choose that as spam? And then when you click on it, you get to a shed building place. And then what? It's not an immediate, like it's not an impulse purchase, is it? I don't get it. And then there was, again, I like when people are a bit, poetic about these. I don't get this one, but it's amazing. I like your face. It's exactly my face. It's like, what? Anyway, we'll have a bit of fun with it, right? Now, I found a really good example a few years ago about how we use machine learning, and then combine it with spam, right? Now, unfortunately, this service doesn't exist anymore, so I encourage anyone to build it again. But it's something that is called Rescam. Now, I'm going to show you a little video that explains it, and then we can all say that that's amazing.
Hey, I'm Rescam, an artificially intelligent chatbot designed to fight scammers by imitating victims. With multiple personalities
and an ever-growing vocabulary.
There's no way for scammers to know
that they're talking to a computer.
Here's how it works. When you delete a scammer's email, they simply move on to other targets. But when you forward your emails to me,
I begin a never-ending conversation, so scammers waste their time talking to a chatbot instead of real people. Here are some excerpts from real email conversations I've been having with scammers.
Do you wish to be a member of the great Illuminati family? Do you want to be payment $5 million weekly? Let us know if you are interested in success.
Dear Illuminati, what a wonderful surprise. I'd love to join your secret club. Do you do a bingo night?
There is not bingo night. Please complete attached form with bank details for your receive full payments of $5 million.
Terrific. But to avoid detection, I'm going to send my bank account details through one number at a time. Ready? 4.
This is not necessary.
7. 8.
Dear Anastasia, getting married sounds like a pretty logical first step.
oh yes, of course, my massive shipment of gold. How could I forget?
I'm sorry, sometimes my caps lock button gets stuck.
I am very interested.
I just have a few more questions.
That's brilliant. And it was a New Zealand company actually that did this partly as a marketing, but also partly because I think they were sick of spam. But it doesn't exist anymore. So it's still sort of, I mean, the video's there and there's still a few sort of, artifacts around. So if anyone wants to do that, you can use sentiment analysis to get started. Hey, okay.
Hey,
No,
I'm
sorry. So that's why I say your turn, because it's so easy, right? If you want to do this, if you don't have an Azure account, get a free one. You don't need credit card, anything. Well, you do need credit card, sorry, but they will not charge you. No, they won't. It's just to make sure that you're not a bot. And use cognitive services because it takes literally 5 minutes to set up. And that's where I go, any questions? And we've got like 20 minutes because no one asks questions. Or we just go get more coffee.
What's the Bing cognitive service?
Bing cognitive service, so that's the search?
Yeah.
Bing search, good question. All right. Ooh. Okay. Windows is just firing up here. So if I go back to my, oh, hang on, there you go. Cognitive services. Is it still here? Is that because you saw it or because you heard about it?
No, it was on the list of things and I was confused.
Oh, I can't remember. Does anyone know what the Bing cognitive service is? I think you can integrate just search into your, I don't know why it's cognitive. I haven't used it. Bing Speech API, well, there you go. Enables speech capability on all internet connected devices. So it's not the Bing search engine. It's, at some point, Microsoft started putting more things under the Bing branding or banner. So this is sort of like Google text, voice to text, but it's just called Bing. That's my understanding of it. Good question, no? Anyone else? because otherwise it's going to be a really short talk. Well, not that short, but short enough. No?
How much?
How much? No, you're good. Yeah, everyone just leave. We'll just have it.
So with some of them, there was like, you can do, they like come out of the box with a bit of stuff.
Mhm.
And then the chart you showed said that you can train a bit extra. I was thinking,
Yep.
like especially the text-to-speech stuff.
Mhm.
Is it sort of like you can train it for your own voice, but it mostly works? Or is it kind of like it works sort of, but you really need to put in effort to get it to work properly?
Yeah, there's a standard model that'll do most things, but say you had specific, vocabulary that you wanted it to learn, you can train it in how that is. It's not for your voice as far as I'm aware. Yeah. And maybe dialects, I'm not sure if the Australian is different from the English from the American. That should cope with that automatically. The model should be trained to do that, but it's especially for vocabulary. Yeah. All right. Well, you're too tired. But that's all I had. So, well, thank you very much. And don't forget that if you don't put a green card out there, your mum doesn't love you. Thanks very much.